2025 quietly did something important. It reminded us that games can still feel good. We got wins, real ones. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 proved that uncompromising design still has an audience. Expedition 33 showed us that passion projects can punch way above their budget and stick to landing. And then there were the comfort wins. Games that didn't try to reinvent the medium but reminded us why we like being here in the first place. The Outer Worlds 2, Dispatch, not perfect, not revolutionary, just fun, confident, well-made games. That's the good place to stand heading into 2026. And here's the thing, 2026 is stacked, like unbelievably stacked. This isn't a one big release every few months kind of year. This is a year where studios are lining up like planes on a runway, engines humming, all watching the same storm cloud on the horizon. Because looming over all of it is GTA 6. GTA isn't just a game release anymore. It's a gravitational event. Studios don't compete with it. They avoid it. They move dates. They whisper internally. They pray their launch windows don't get vaporized by a Rockstar trailer dropping on a random Tuesday. And that makes 2026 fascinating. On one hand, this could be one of the strongest years gaming has had in a decade. On the other, it could be a year where great games quietly slip through the cracks because one titan takes up all the oxygen in the room. So this isn't a hype video. This is very much a reality check with a little bit of optimism. We're going to look at 2026 honestly, what feels exciting, what feels risky, what feels like it might collapse under its own ambition. And yeah, we're gonna have fun with it, because after a solid 2025, it feels okay to finally be excited again. So let's talk about 2026. Before we even talk about specific games, we need to talk about the terrain that they're launching into, because 2026 isn't just stacked with releases, it's stacked with constraints. First, the elephant humming under everyone's desk, PC hardware economics. Memory prices are climbing again. GPU prices are, let's just say, aspirational. And whether you're on Team NVIDIA, Team AMD, the reality is the same. Upgrading doesn't feel casual anymore. It feels like you have to be extremely deliberate, and you can't just walk into a micro center and hope for the best, right? PC is no longer the enthusiast niche. It is a primary platform. Now here's the twist. Despite all the chatter, next-gen consoles might not be as close as we think. Between longer dev cycles, ballooning budgets, and hardware supply realities, it's starting to feel like we're squeezing more life out of our current gen than expected, which means something important for 2026. Developers, they don't really have an excuse anymore. These engines are mature, tools are understood, the hardware has been mapped, benchmark, and stress test to death. If a game launches in 2026 and runs poorly, that's not bleeding edge ambition, that's a pipeline problem. Now, do I have optimism that companies can optimize across the board? Sure, absolutely. Do I expect it across the board? Let's say I'm cautiously hopeful, because here's the tension defining this era of games. Studios want cinematic scale. Players want performance and polish. Hardware prices are pushing people to sit on older builds longer, and release schedules are tighter than ever. So 2026 isn't just about who makes the best game. It's about who ships a great game that actually respects the ecosystem it lands in. That's the lens that we're going to use today. Not hype, not doom, just a realistic look at the year that could be incredible, if it doesn't trip over itself. There is a specific kind of horror game that sticks with you longer than jump scares. Not loud horror, not gore-heavy horror, the kind that makes you uncomfortable in silence. That's the energy Reanimal is giving off. At a glance, this looks just like another eerie co-op horror game. Dark environments, unsettling creature design, slow movement, lots of tension. But the more I've looked into it, the more it feels like this game is aiming for something more psychological than performative. These are the devs behind Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and this isn't horror as a spectacle. This is horror with a presence. So, what kind of grabbed me immediately here is the co-op angle. Co-op, is just tricky. Most games turn it into either chaos or comedy. Fear, kind of just evaporates the second you realize you can revive your buddy and crack jokes and, continue running from monsters. But Reanimal looks like it's not trying to make co-op part of fear, not the relief. You're not just surviving with someone, you're surviving because of someone. These environments feel intentional. Narrow spaces, limited visibility, the constant feeling that something is nearby but never fully revealed. And that's smart. The scariest horror games understand restraint. They let your brain do the work. You know, if this game leans into slow pacing, shared tension, limited player power, it could genuinely be unsettling in a way most co-op horror games aren't. But here's the make it or break it question. Does the fear hold up once you understand the systems? Because horror games tend to fall apart the moment you learn the rules. Once you know how enemies behave, once you know how safe you really are, the illusion cracks. So Reanimal has to walk a very thin line. Too scripted and it becomes predictable. Too random and it becomes frustrating. If this game overstays its welcome, the tension dies. If it's too short, it risks feeling like an experience instead of a game. And the co-op games especially need a reason to replay beyond, oh, that was cool once. That said, this is exactly the kind of horror I want more of. Subtle, oppressive, and shared. Not screaming at you to be scared, but quietly daring you to sit in discomfort with someone else. This is firmly, for me, a wait and watch game. If the execution lands, this could be one of the most memorable horror experiences of the year. If it doesn't, it'll still be interesting, just not lasting. Either way, it's on my radar. From what I checked, we can play the demo. Let me know in the comments below if you guys would like that. Yeah, so horror in 2026 is trying to be louder. It's trying to be smarter. All right, next up, things get very Capcom. Resident Evil is in a really interesting place right now. It's confident again. It knows what it is, and for the first time in a while, it feels like it's thinking forward instead of just remixing its past. That's why Resident Evil Requiem stands out immediately. There's already a lot known about this game, and honestly, that's a good thing. Capcom isn't hiding. They're not playing coy, they're telling you exactly what kind of experience this is supposed to be. And the smartest decision they've made so far is the dual protagonist. Resident Evil has always worked best when it balances two types of fear: the slow, suffocating horror of the unknown, and a desperate, survival-driven tension. Requiem looks like it's building its entire identity around that balance. Two protagonists, two perspectives, potentially two different playstyles. That's not just variety, there we go. That's pacing control. Different characters let Capcom, obviously, change how vulnerable you feel, change how you approach combat, change how you experience the same world. If they do this right, it keeps the game from collapsing into routine, because one of survival horror's biggest enemies is familiarity. What's encouraging here is that Requiem doesn't feel like it's trying to chase trends. It's not overly cinematic, it's not bloated, and it doesn't feel like it's chasing action just to keep attention. This looks like a game that understands tension and control, not chaos. Now, here's where things can go wrong. The dual protagonists only work if both sides are equally compelling. If one character's sections are clearly better, players start rushing the other half. If one playstyle feels safer or more fun, the balance breaks. And Resident Evil lives or dies on balance. This is where Capcom has earned some trust. Their recent track record has been strong. Performance has been solid. Design has been deliberate. If anyone right now understands how to optimize horror without neutering it, it's Capcom. So no, I'm not expecting reinvention here. What I am expecting is refinement. A game that knows exactly how long to stay and when to leave. And honestly, that's all Resident Evil needs to be right now. This feels like one of the safer bets of 2026. Not because it's playing it safe, but because it understands its strengths. If the dual protagonist system lands the way it looks like it will, Resident Evil Requiem could quietly be one of the most well-paced horror games we've had in years. Alright, February's done, but next up is a game that feels like horror and is more like a ticking clock. This is one of those games that make me pause. Not because I'm hyped, but because I'm very curious. Very, very curious. I watched the trailer and have read the description probably 4 times at this point. And I'm interested. Tides of Tomorrow isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It isn't trying to sell you on power or spectacle. It's selling you consequence. At its core, this is a narrative-driven game built around asynchronous multiplayer. The world is shaped by other players. Their decisions ripple into your experience. You're not playing with people in real time, you're living with the aftermath of what they've done. So I guess we should talk about shared worlds, digital footprints, and losing control in games from other players' actions. This idea isn't new, but it's still incredibly underexplored. Most games flirt with choice. They pretend that your decisions matter. Tides of Tomorrow feels like it's naturally willing to hand some of that authorship over, and that's terrifying in a different way. There's a quiet sadness to this game. Flooded environments, a world of decay, stories told through absence instead of exposition. It feels reflective, almost melancholic. And that's the risk about this world, because slower, thoughtful games don't scream for attention in trailers. But here's the real question this game has to answer. Do other players make my experience richer or more frustrating? Because player-driven systems are unpredictable by nature. What if someone ruins the narrative beat? What if the most interesting path gets overwritten? What if my story stops feeling like my story? This game live or dies on curation. The systems need guardrails. The world needs to react intelligently, and the narrative needs to feel intentional, not random. If it pulls that off, this could be genuinely special. If it doesn't, it risks becoming an interesting experiment that players admire and then they move on from. This isn't a game I expect everyone would love, but it is the kind of game I'm glad exists. For me, Tides of Tomorrow is a buy. A game that developers should be rewarded for attempting in their efforts. One that, if what I think the game will play is accurate, would feel kind of like KCD1, diamond in the rough. And look where Warhorse was able to do because of the support they received. There is a demo out there, so maybe I'll make a video of me playing live for you and review then. Name's Bond. James Bond. James Bond games are complicated. Tomorrow Never Dies was literally the first game I ever played on PlayStation 1. Everyone remembers the idea of great Bond games. Very few remember the reality. So when I say I'm excited for 007 First Light, I'm saying that carefully. This isn't just another licensed game. Bond is one of those properties that lives or dies on tone. Too much action and it becomes generic. Too much stealth and it loses its momentum. Too much nostalgia and it feels trapped in the past. So the fact that this game exists at all means expectations need to be realistic. What does have me optimistic is that First Light seems to understand restraint, and it's made by IO Interact. This doesn't look like a power fantasy. It looks like a measured spy fantasy. Espionage, observation, controlled violence. Bond works best when he's not just invincible, he's prepared. And I love 007 so much, I literally have an Omega Speedmaster, which is, if you don't know, the company that makes the Spy Master in the 007 universe. Anywho, what I'm really watching here is Identity. Is this a stealth game with action moments, or an action game with stealth moments? I'm thinking it's kind of gonna play like Uncharted did, because Bond doesn't need massive skill trees or bloated systems. He needs situations. The Hitman games are exactly why I think this game has the potential to be great. Smaller, tighter levels works for spies. If it's too open world, you'll lose the gravity of each situation. And here's where my caution kicks in. Licensed games have a habit of playing it safe, and safe is the enemy of memorable. It becomes checklist driven. If it leans too hard on spectacle, it forgets its tension. Then it stops being Bond and starts being wallpaper. I'm not expecting reinvention here either. What I am hoping for is confidence. A game that knows its pacing, knows when to slow down, and knows that silence can be just as exciting as explosions. So yes, I'm very excited, but I'm excited in a wait-and-see way. If 007 First Light nails tone and pacing, this could be a surprise standout, and if it doesn't, it'd still be interesting, just not long-lasting. March sets the tone nicely, which brings us to April. And April is where things start getting weird again. Let's talk about Pragmata. Full disclosure here, I played the demo, I have gameplay footage, and I will be making a review that drops right after this video. Probably like a couple days after this video. Pragmata is one of those games that have been hovering over the industry for years now. Not hyping itself, not explaining itself, just existing. And somehow, that's made it more interesting. Capcom has been unusually quiet about this game. And at this point, that feels intentional. We know the broad strokes, sci-fi setting, a strange relationship between characters, mechanics that don't immediately map onto familiar genres. But we don't know the full pitch. And in an era where games often explain themselves to death, that restraint is refreshing. That gives Pragmata some breathing room. They're not throwing things at the wall anymore, they're deliberate. The ship Capcom, by they ship polished games, they don't overpromise and then disappear. Anyway, that said, curiosity only carries you so far. The big question is mechanical identity. Is this action forward? Is it puzzle driven? Is it experimental in a way that actually feels good to play? Because mystery without clarity can quickly turn into confusion once the controller is in your hands. There's also the risk of expectation drift. The longer a game stays vague, the more players project onto it, and no game can live up to an idea that only exists in our heads. If Pragmata is smaller, tighter, and more focused than people expect, that could be a strength or a disappointment. I'm not walking into this expecting a genre-defining experience. What I am hoping for is something intentional. A game that knows what it wants to be, even if that thing is niche. Because not every game needs to be loud and to be meaningful. For me, Pragmata stays firmly in the interested, not invested category. I want to see real gameplay, which I have. I want to understand the gameplay loop, which I have. And if it clicks, I'm in. And not to spoil my review that's coming up, but I'm in. Because after months of restraint, April doesn't stay quiet for long. Because next up, things get loud and colorful. And very different. Let's talk about Invincible Versus. Alright, I'll be upfront about this one. I love this show. So yes, there is a bias here. But it's an informed bias. Invincible is kind of the perfect fighting game material. The power scale is absurd, the violence is unapologetic, and the characters are built around impact. This universe doesn't need realism, it needs momentum. The appeal of consequences in superhero stories is hard to translate to a fighting game. A versus fighter makes sense though for Invincible. Short, explosive matches, big hits, high damage. This isn't a franchise that needs long RPG systems or open world. It needs to feel immediate. But adaptation is where things get dangerous. Great source material doesn't guarantee great mechanics. And fighting games live and die on balance, responsiveness, and depth. If it leans too hard on spectacle, it'll fade fast. What I'm watching closely is the roster and post-launch support. Invincible has a deep bench of characters, but not all of them translate to interesting playstyles. If this launches shallow and promises depth later, that's a problem. I'm not expecting this to compete with genre titans. What I am hoping for is something that respects both the fighting game community and the fans of the show. If it can thread that needle, this could carve out a solid niche. So yes, I'm excited. But this is measured excitement. If the mechanics are tight, I'll be there. If it's all flash and no fundamentals, I'll enjoy the novelty and then move on. And with that brings a wrap to April. Which brings us to May. And May gives us something familiar, but with a twist. I think it's time for Lego Batman. I'm going to piss some people off, and I'm going to say something that might be sacrilegious to some people. I've never been a fan of the Lego games. Not because I think they're bad. They're polished, they're accessible, they know exactly what they are. They just never really been for me. For a long time, Lego games have followed a very familiar rhythm. Light combat, simple puzzles, collectathon progression, charm doing a lot of the heavy lifting. It works, clearly. Also hasn't changed much. And the Lego Batman movie, I loved it. The humor was sharp, self-aware, comfortable, poking fun at decades of Batman mythology without disrespecting it. Jokes for kids. It was jokes for people who know the lore. In a kid's movie, I think, because kids don't understand, but adults, it makes going to watch this movie with kids, if you have kids, a lot better. The real question for Lego Batman, Legacy of the Dark Knight, is simple. Does the game inherit that energy, or does it fall back into the standard Lego comfort zone? Just another Lego game with a Batman skin. I already know how that plays. But if it leans into satire, character-driven humor, and playful commentary on Batman's absurd legacy, now we're talking. I'm not expecting mechanical reinvention here. What I am hoping for is tighter pacing, smarter writing, and a willingness to let humor lead the experience instead of collectibles. Games don't need more stuff. They need more personality. The risk is obvious. This is safe, existing fans, but won't win anyone new. Hard into jokes without gameplay evolution, it becomes disposable. It is using humor as an identity, not a garnish. This is very much a wait-and-see game. Not because I'm dismissing it, but because this could go either way. If it captured the spirit of the movie, this might finally be the Lego game that clicks for me. If not, I'll still appreciate the effort, even if I bounce. Hey, calendar goes quiet for a bit. September shows up, the Blade. There's a reason the calendar suddenly goes quiet here. June, July, and August almost always been historically slow for game releases. And it's not because studios don't have games ready. It's because summer is when the industry pauses. First and foremost, this is showcase season. Studios are busy prepping demos, trailers, and builds for summer events. Marketing teams are in full presentation mode. Developers are supporting vertical slices instead of polishing launch candidates. Shipping a major game during that window just doesn't make sense. You'd be competing with announcements instead of attention. Secondly, like most people, this is when people actually take time off. Game development is brutal. Long cycles, long hours, long burnouts. Summer is traditionally when teams rotate vacations, slow internal pipelines, and reset before the final push towards the fall. Nothing kills momentum faster than trying to launch a massive game when half your studio's on staggered leave. There's also the audience factor. Players, gamers, are outside more, traveling, even touching grass occasionally. Big releases do better when people are inside, focused, and ready to sink dozens of hours into something new. So the quiet summer isn't a drought. It's a breath. And historically, that breath sets the stage for what comes next. Because once September hits, the gloves come off. Before we talk about Phantom Blade Zero, I just want to say, I am a true gamer, okay? I had so much belief in Starfield and was very much not thrilled. Phantom Blade Zero is one of those games where trailer doesn't show you the gameplay. It dares you to doubt it because Phantom Blade Zero looks absurdly confident. From the jump, this game is selling speed, precision, style, fast combat, aggressive animations, a visual identity that feels handcrafted instead of filtered through 10 layers of realism. It wants to look cool, and more importantly, it wants to feel good. There's a reason people keep comparing this to games like Sekiro or Devil May Cry. Not because it's copying, but because it's clearly chasing mastery. This doesn't look like a game where button mashing survives very long. It looks like a game that wants you to learn timing, spacing, and intent. But here's the real test. Does the combat system have depth? Or is it just speed? Because flashy combat can fool you for the first few hours. True depth reveals itself later, probably around the hour 20 mark when enemies start asking more of you. Enemy variety and boss design. That's really the big key here for any JRPG. Whether difficulty comes from systems or stat inflation, what's also interesting is the tone. This doesn't feel like open world sprawl. It feels focused. A world built to support combat, not distract from it. Think Elden Ring, without so much exploration. And honestly, that's refreshing. The risk here is expectation. This game looks incredible in controlled demos, but consistency is everything. Enemy encounters repeat too often, if the difficulty curve spikes unfairly, if style outweighs substance, then the illusion cracks. That said, this feels like a team that knows exactly what it wants to deliver. Not a trend chaser, not a bloated experience, a sharp, focused action game. And those are rare. For me, Phantom Blade Zero is one of the most exciting releases on this entire list. Not because it's guaranteed, but because it's aiming high and showing its work. If it lands, this could be one of those games people reference for years. And September doesn't ease us in, because after that, November brings the boogeyman. You like bank robberies? Yeah. You like beef? You like cars? Maybe we should make like Bonnie and Clyde. Oh, Grand Theft Auto 6. Let's be honest for a second. GTA 6 isn't just another game release. It's a cultural event. And for a lot of us millennials, Vice City wasn't just a setting. It was our first GTA. The music, the neon, the attitude. That game didn't just entertain us. It helped us define what open world games could be. And here's the thing. Rockstar, they have their reputation. They don't rush. Clearly, this game's been delayed twice, might even be delayed again. They don't rush, they don't chase trends, they disappear for years, and they reappear with something that resets expectations. Red Dead Redemption 2, LA Noire, Bully, GTA San Andreas, GTA 4, GTA 5. All these games are great, not because they try to do everything, but because they knew exactly what they wanted to be. And we have to talk about Red Dead Redemption 2, because I genuinely believe, and I replayed it just to make sure it still holds up, but I believe it's one of the most perfect games ever made. Visually, it still outclasses games nearly a decade later. Systems-wise, it handles RPG mechanics better than studios like CD Projekt Red and Bethesda ever have. Narratively, it's competing in the same conversation as Naughty Dog. That's impressive. RDR2 didn't just simulate a world, it understood its world. So here's where GTA 6 gets complicated for me. I don't doubt the tech, I don't doubt the budget, and I won't doubt the polish. This game will be a powerhouse of interactivity. It'll react to you in ways other games wouldn't even dare try. Hell, it might even stress the real-life power grid. But that's not the question anymore. The real question is, what does GTA 6 want to do? Satire is harder now. GTA has always strived on exaggerating reality, but reality has caught up. Politics, social media, culture, absurdity. We're already living in a parody. We're basically one South Park episode away from being a South Park episode. So where does GTA point the camera? And here's another layer of honesty. This will be my first GTA since GTA 4. Not because I stopped liking Rockstar, but because I outgrew what GTA was doing at the time. And Rockstar didn't lose me. They just shifted focus. I'm not coming into GTA 6 blinded by hype. I'm coming in asking what kind of experience this actually wants to be. Is this a crime sandbox? A social satire? A character-driven narrative? Or is it something else entirely? Because RDR2 succeeded by being deliberate, slow, and reflective. GTA has historically been loud, chaotic, and confrontational. So does GTA 6 mature or double down? And here's the optimistic part. If anyone can answer that question thoughtfully, it's Rockstar. They don't chase engagement metrics. They don't design for TikTok clips. They design experiences that linger. That said, the bar has never been higher. They're not just competing with other games anymore. They're competing with their own legacy. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. Not because I think GTA 6 will be perfect, but because I believe Rockstar understands the weight of this moment. They know what RDR2 represents. They know what GTA means to an entire generation. The question isn't whether GTA 6 will be impressive. The question is whether it'll be purposeful. And honestly, this is one of those games I could talk about for hours. So, if you want me to go deeper on GTA 6, the tone, systems, narrative potential, all of it, leave a comment. Because this one deserves its own conversation. GTA 6 isn't just the biggest game of 2026. It might just be the most important question mark the industry has right now. Ace Combat is Ace Combat. If it clicks for you, you already know. I'm going to react to this one in the moment because I've never played an Ace Combat game and I want to react live with you. 30th anniversary, awesome.
Take a look. What a sight to behold.
Graphics look good, water looks like water.
It's all over.
A little too static even, you know, that's okay.
Last lands of the FCU, the Federation of Central Asia.
First of all, thank you for joining us on this ship.
Yeah, visually impressive game. It's hard not to be a visually impressive game anymore.
Yes,
you know,
we are critically undermanned on this ship.
Don't worry at all. The man in front is Jan Rexco, the Wings of Thief. You're riding shotgun with a legendary ace of
Also, if you played flight games like this, like flight simulators, let me know if you used your controller, if you have like a joystick type setup. I used to play Microsoft Flight Simulator. I have all my gear like that.
Still swimming, soldier. Make it home alive.
Just keep at it, Rex.
Ray, heads up!
On your orders, Rex.
To keep off alive, Wings of Thief must stay on the mission. Must fly on.
I can make up your kill count to be whatever. Right. From now on, you'll be the greatest ace pilot this war will ever know.
Character development. It's good. Looks tight. Looks like there's gonna be a bunch of stuff to do outside of just the combat. Yeah, looks great. Looks great. Let me know below if you've played Ace Combat 7 or any of the Ace Combats. Let me know how it plays. Is it more of an RPG? Is it slightly more open world than I'm guessing? My biggest fear for this is that it's not just mission after mission after mission, that there is some sort of like exploration outside of the plane. Yeah, looks good though. H-Field High, Rock to School. This feels like one of those games where the vibe will either hook me instantly or bounce right off. And it kind of reminds me of a more mature Bully. So let's react live to the trailer, yeah?
It's the year 2002, and three friends decided not to leave school as losers.
Yeah, the bike, the map, yeah, it just reminds me of Bully.
This young man right here is
But
our new
grown up
student
version
Sam.
seems very fun.
There's Hale Baines, the guy who thinks college is for chumps.
You're the new guy, huh? What's up?
Axel Philly.
Little Guitar Hero type thing going on there. That's neat.
And you, Sam Tatum, the new
They
kid.
don't show
So we
that
can have
off.
the party, but my mom cannot find out. If she does, she'll go ballistic.
They made a plan to rock the last few months at school and leave the
Love interest, cool.
They want to indoctrinate me even more into a boring fucking life and work 9 to 5 like some sort of mindless
Couple
zombie.
street fights, nice.
Fuck thinking about college, dude. We need to stick to our plan to rock the school.
But there's always something or someone getting in their way. Overbearing parents,
If you don't get into college, I'll throw you out of my damn house.
perverted teachers.
Pervy teacher, of course. That's a classic staple, apparently, in today's America.
There are aliens in the forest, in the countryside.
Not to mention Seth, the most popular guy at school.
You know what's funny? Recently, I've been thinking about
Do you think you can move to my town?
like a school, like a life sim.
My friends and ruin my party.
And I've been thinking about, like, if I were to develop one, if it would be, like, from where would I start? And I think high school is, like, the perfect place to start a life sim. So it's pretty neat that this is coming out, because I was literally thinking about a game like this a few months ago. But yeah, it's very much giving me bully vibes. But instead of being in elementary school, you're a senior in high school, so you're basically just about an adult. So I'm assuming the themes are going to be more more in tune with, you know, us adults actually can deal with, you know.
All look prettier than ever.
Looks like there's a huge map though.
We drink as much as we could, go streaking to the girl we liked, and then
I wonder
tell
if you
her
could choose to play
how
like
much we
sport
loved
here,
her.
because there's a scene where he was beating up the football player. But I wonder if you joined the football team, is that mission, locked? Oh, that's awesome. Q2 2026. Yeah, that looks great. Absolutely great. Yeah, like I said, giving me a lot of bully vibes off the bat. Let's see, Refugium Games. Let's see. Oh, they made a lot of horror stuff. The Grey Hill Incident. I actually have played this before. Yeah, that's awesome. Vacant Mind. I have not played that. So this is a completely different type of game than they've made, which is odd. They pivoted from kind of like slow burn horror to bully, which I think is hilarious. So The Occultist is one that I've actually been anticipating for a while. So I'm going to react to the gameplay trailer in the moment just to see if it still hits the way I hope it does.
Screams drawing me in. Better use the pendulum.
A lot of good horror games coming out this year. It seems like. Nice puzzles, very dark and gloomy atmosphere. Kind of has that AC Valhalla. Can look through a bird thing if you need to. It's been making me dizzy, man. Ghosts of Robots working. Yeah, so this is definitely just one of those games that, again, appeals to me just because it's... I have a thing for horror. I love horror movies. I love when... As a writer myself, I think horror is one of the hardest genres to write. So I appreciate horror a lot more just because I know that it's difficult to pull off. This game does look very well polished, and it seems pretty ambitious in what it's trying to do. From the description, it just says that it's a first-person narrative thriller. You play as Alan Rebels, a paranormal investigator who travels to an abandoned British island after his father's disappearance. So you get the whole island to explore, face supernatural entities, and uncover long-buried occult rituals. Alright. Aphelion is one of those games that doesn't try to grab you by the collar. It doesn't sell explosions. It doesn't sell power. It sells isolation. At first glance, this looks like a familiar pitch. Sci-fi setting, distant planet, lone figure against an overwhelming environment. The tone here feels different. This doesn't feel like a survival power fantasy. It feels quiet, observational, almost lonely. There's a growing space in games right now for experiences that slow you down. That's why I think games like Death Stranding work so well. Not games that test your reflexes, but games that test your patience and curiosity. Aphelion looks like it's leaning into that space. That's risky. Slow games demand attention. The big question Aphelion has to answer is simple. Why am I here? Exploration games live or die on purpose. If discovery feels meaningful, players lean in. If it feels aimless, they drift away. What I like so far is the sense of scale. The environments don't feel like playgrounds. They feel indifferent. That's important. A world that doesn't care about you forces you to care about it. The reason why I love Bethesda games is because Bethesda's always been good on environmental storytelling, being able to give you plot information or lore just from you exploring. Silence in games and why every moment doesn't need music or dialogue. I think developers and writers, we tend to want exposition. Sometimes silence weighs more and can have more of an impact. Risk here is repetition. Atmosphere can carry a game for a few hours, but eventually systems need to step in. Reversal, discovery, narrative breadcrumbs. If Aphelion doesn't evolve as you explore, the magic fades. That said, this is exactly the kind of game I want studios to keep making. Not loud, not bloated, not chasing engagement. Just confident enough to let you sit with it. I'm not expecting this to be a blockbuster. I'm expecting this to be memorable if it sticks to land. And honestly, that's more than enough. For me, Aphelion is a patient curiosity game. I want to see real gameplay. I want to understand the loop. And if the experiences feel intentional from start to finish, this could quietly be special. Alright, next one shifts gears hard. And it's arguably one of my most anticipated sequels. I have control issues. And I don't say this lightly. I loved Control. Really loved it. The story, the lore, the way the world unfolded piece by piece instead of dumping exposition on you. At one point, I was playing Control so much, it literally fried my 6950 XT. Yes. And that's not a metaphor. That's a true story. And because of it, I upgraded to a 7900 XTX. Control worked because it committed. It didn't explain everything. It didn't soften the weirdness. It trusted you to be curious. Federal Bureau of Control as a concept was phenomenal. The environmental storytelling was great. You could walk into any room, any area, and find lore, find memos, find things that expanded the universe. This was a game that rewarded attention. Mechanically, it clicked. Combat felt fluid. Telekinesis wasn't just a gimmick, it was an identity. You weren't just shooting enemies, you were reshaping space. Everything in Control felt earned. The combat loop stayed fresh, especially with every upgrade, with every new ability you got. The world design supported its mechanics. And that's why Control Resonant makes me both excited and cautious. Because Control's magic came from mystery. And mystery is hard to sequel. The more you explain a strange world, the less strange it becomes. So the real question here is Resonant expanding the universe or explaining it? Because there's a huge difference. Expansion means new ideas, new anomalies, new perspectives. Explanation means answers, and answers can be dangerous. What I want from Resonant isn't bigger explosion or louder moments. I want deeper weirdness, stranger rules, more moments where the game lets me sit in uncertainty. And here's where optimism comes in. Remedy understands tone. They've always been able and more interested in mood and meaning than raw scale. They don't rush things. They don't dilute their identity easily. Risk here is overexposure. If Resident starts answering questions that didn't need answering, if it turns mystery into lore dumps, if it forgets that silence is part of the appeal, then something gets lost. But even with that caution, this is one of my most anticipated games on this list. Because Control wasn't just a great game, it was a great feeling. And if Resident can recapture that magic, that feeling, even partially, I'm in. Very in. And the announcement at the Game Awards, chef's kiss.
Brace yourself.
There's a specific kind of horror that doesn't rely on monsters. It relies on doubt, which is why I love Scream. And Directive 8020 feels like it's built entirely around that idea. This isn't horror where something jumps out at you. This is horror where something might be wrong and you can't prove it. Isolation, confined spaces, a setting where trust isn't just fragile, it's dangerous. Paranoia is one of the most effective tools in horror, and it's criminally underused in games. Because paranoia turns every decision into a question. Who do you trust? What information is real? Are you reacting to a threat or creating one? This is a great spot to show you that these devs know what they're doing. What makes Directive 8020 interesting is how paranoia could bleed into mechanics. Dialogue choices suddenly matter more. Observation becomes survival. Hesitation isn't weakness, it's instinct. Fear of making the wrong call, such an underused tactic in game development. Kind of why I think Baldur's Gate 3 was great, was because it allowed player agency, it allowed players to make the wrong mistake. It still continued on. The success of this game comes down to one thing. Does it make me doubt my own judgment? Because the moment the rules become clear, the fear fades. This feels like a game that understands pacing. Long, quiet moments, limited information, a creeping sense that something has already gone wrong, and you're just late to the realization. Danger here is over-explanation. If the game starts spelling things out, it gives you too many answers, if it reassures you too often, paranoia collapses. Horror like this needs confidence in its audience. And honestly, this is the kind of horror I want more of.
What if that went differently? Hey, I'm Will Doyle, Creative Director on Directive 8020, and I'm here to share with you a new feature that we've added for the first time in a Dark Pictures game. Turning Points is a new narrative system which allows you to go back and change the outcome of your choices. As with all our games, Directive 8020 has a branching story with multiple endings. You'll be able to track the choices and paths that you've taken in the game and see alternate paths that link to each of the major decisions that you've made. With Turning Points, you can rewind to a pivotal point or decision, collect missing collectibles, or see how different choices would have played out. By the same token, your actions matter in our games. If you want to live by your decisions, there's also a survivor mode setting that prevents you from rewinding, but still lets you view the decision tree. Turning Points will be available both digitally and physically for all copies of the game from when you start your very first mission.
I want to be fair to this one right out the gate. There's clearly a lot of work being put into Marathon. The art direction is striking, the tone is confident, and Bungie, for better or for worse, knows how to make shooting feel good. For me personally, I'm a little burned out of the extraction shooter genre. It's not that these games are bad, it's that they ask for very specific kind of commitment. High tension, high stakes, high repetition. And right now, that loop just doesn't excite me the way it used to. That said, I can still recognize the effort here. If you're deep into extraction shooters, this could be your next obsession. If Bungie nails progression, balance, and long-term support, this might absolutely find its audience. For me though, this game, I'll be watching from the sidelines. Not because it's doing something wrong, but because I think I just need a break from the genre.
Holding a shovel. That's where you come in, Runner. A living weapon, reborn, every time you break. The truth is in your hands. Survive or die.
This one should be great, and I don't say that lightly. Wolverine is one of those characters where the margin for error is razor thin. You either understand him or you don't. Wolverine doesn't work as a quippy power fantasy. He's not aspirational in the traditional sense. He's violent. He's damaged. He's constantly wrestling with restraint. If this game treats him like Spider-Man with claws, it's already failed. And this is where I want to be very specific. As long as this doesn't have Spider-Man 2 style writing, or that overly safe, overly self-aware PC sensibility tone, this has the potential to be something special. Wolverine needs weight, consequences, moments that are uncomfortable, not smoothed over. Mechanically, this should feel visceral. Every hit should matter. Every slash should feel brutal, not flashy. Combat should feel exhausting, not elegant. Regeneration shouldn't remove danger. Wolverine works best when he's vulnerable, and I think that's what makes him a relatable character. Pain as part of power. I'm not looking for a massive open world here. I'd much rather have tight level design, focus encounters, and a story that knows when to shut up and let the moments breathe. To Insomniac's credit, they know how to make games that feel good. They understand flow. They understand feedback, and they understand when they want to, they can show restraint. The question is whether they're willing to let Wolverine be uncomfortable and let players sit in that discomfort. Risk here isn't gameplay, it's tone. The writing pulls punches, if the violence feels sanitized, if Wolverine starts narrating his trauma instead of living it, then something essential is lost. But if they commit, they trust the characters, if they respect the darkness, if they let the consequences do the work, this could be one of the best superhero games we've ever gotten. For me, this is high on the list. Not blind hype, not guaranteed greatness, but real belief that, if handled correctly, this could be exactly what Wolverine deserves. Alright, from claws and blood to something a little more literary.
Because I ain't no hero. I'm Wolverine.
A Plague Tale is one of those series that surprise people by being gentle. Not easy, not light, but deliberate. It wasn't trying to be a blockbuster. It was trying to tell a story that lingered. What made the original games work wasn't spectacle. It was intimacy. Small moments, quiet conversations, a world that felt cruel, indifferent, and heartbreakingly human. These games trusted the player to slow down, and that trust paid off. So the word legacy here is doing a lot of heavy lifting, because this series doesn't need an escalation. It doesn't need to be bigger. It doesn't need to be louder. What it needs is continuity of tone. The big question Resonance has to answer is, does it deepen the emotional core or dilute it by trying to expand? Because A Plague Tale works when it's restrained. Moments starts chasing scale over sentiment, it loses its identity. I'm not expecting the dramatic mechanical reinvention here. What I'm looking for is refinement. Better pacing, smoother systems, less friction between story and interaction. Friction is the enemy of narrative games like this. It has a tendency to break immersion. More complicate the mechanics, the control systems, you lose something. Atmosphere here is everything. Sound design, lighting, stillness. These games live in the spaces between action, not the action itself. Risk is obvious. The game over-explains its themes. If it leans into melodrama, if it forgets subtlety is its greatest strength, magic fades. Subtlety, hard to sequel. It's hard to trilogy. There's a reason for optimism. This is a studio that understands emotional restraint. They have shown interest in turning this into a franchise machine. That gives me confidence. For me, Resonance, A Plague Tale Legacy is a quiet anticipation game. And honestly, that's the best kind of legacy. Alright, from quiet tragedy to something much louder.
I do solemnly pledge, mind and body, I will defend the Empire with my life.
This is one of the strangest games ever made. Not because of its premise, not because of its genre, because everything around it. Squadron 42 has existed in the shadow of something much bigger and much messier. You could talk about Squadron 42 without talking about its persistent universe counterpart, Star Citizen. Between crowdfunding, ship sales, and ongoing development, the project has raised close to $1 billion. It's not hyperbole, it's history. For over a decade, that money has gone into building an engine, back-end tech, and simulation systems that are frankly unprecedented. So here's what expectations get dangerous. That level of funding, that much tech, that many years of iteration, Squadron 42 should, I mean should, be incredible. Not just good, not just ambitious. A genuine game of the year, hell, Game of the Decade contender. It's been confirmed as encouraging on paper. Roughly 40-hour single-player narrative, focused experience, not a sandbox, not a live service. A beginning, middle, and end. And honestly, that's the smartest decision they could have made. One of the biggest criticisms surrounding Star Citizen has always been scope. Infinite ambition, infinite systems, no finish line. Squadron 42, by contrast, has a defined goal. That alone gives it a chance. If the tech works the way it's been advertised, if the engine delivers on its fidelity, scale, immersion, backend actually supports what they've been building all these years, this could be one of the most technically impressive FPSs we've ever experienced. And I had to relax, and I'm a little sad. Because this is what I was hoping, and I think what everyone was hoping Starfield would be. And the fact that Starfield didn't have seamless transitions or simulation depth, this game is going to hit home for a lot of people. But here's the unavoidable truth. Should doesn't ship games, execution does. We've been promised a lot before, and promises don't equal polish. So the real question with Squadron 42 isn't ambition, it's restraint. Can this team finally lock something down, finish it, and deliver a cohesive experience that stands on its own? I'm not dismissive here. Trust me when I say I want this to succeed, because if Squadron 42 lands the way it theoretically can, it justifies a decade of work and a mountain of skepticism. But until it's in players' hands, this remains one of the biggest we'll see moments in modern gaming. For me, Squadron 42 is cautious curiosity at its peak. The ingredients are there. The resources are there. The time has certainly been there. Now we find out if the game is too. Alright, from one of the most ambitious projects ever funded to something much smaller, stranger, and more intimate. But also none of those words describe it either. My pup wants to say hi. Alright, this is one of those games where the more we see of it, the harder it becomes to ignore. Crimson Desert just isn't just looking for anymore. It's looking ready. From combat to traversal to sheer visual density, the game feels like it's swinging for the fences. Big set pieces, large-scale battles, fluid animation work, and the world actually feels alive, not just busy. It doesn't feel like a tech demo anymore. It feels like a statement. Based on what we've seen so far, Crimson Desert absolutely has Game of the Year potential. Not because it's trying to copy what Western RPGs do, but because it's clearly confident in its own identity. It's weighty, has expressive combat, cinematic but still player-driven, scope that feels intentional, not bloated. We need to talk about where this game is coming from. This is a studio backed by serious live service money and years of infrastructure investment. That matters. It means tech stability, it means experienced engineers, it means the freedom to take big creative swings without cutting corners. You can briefly nod to the studio without dwelling. They've already proven that they can support massive systems at scale. Here's what really excites me about Crimson Desert. This game feels like a potential inflection point. For a long time, Chinese, Korean, and Japanese developers have absolutely dominated their home markets, but haven't always been given the same spotlight globally when it comes to large-scale, prestige single-player games. If Crimson Desert lands the way it looks like it can, it could be a spark, a signal, that studios outside the traditional Western pipeline can compete at the highest of levels. Not just technically, but creatively. They have different design philosophies, different pacing, different cultural storytelling instincts. This isn't imitation, it's evolution. But let's be clear, ambition cuts both ways. The risk here is scope management. Systems overload, a world so big cohesion gets lost. Unlike some projects, this doesn't feel directionless. It feels deliberate. It gives me confidence as how much of this game is being shown, not promised. Extended gameplay, complex encounters, systems interacting in real time. This isn't smoke and mirrors. For me, Crimson Desert is one of the most exciting games on this entire list. Not just because it could be great, but because of what it could unlock for the industry if it is. And from one massive open world contender, we move to something much, much more controlled. Munfish is back at it again. So, I kind of need to hit the rewind button on the cube, because this is the multiplayer game Jeff Keighley should have won the Game Awards with. Because at first glance, this looked like a minimalist sci-fi puzzle game, and that's not what it is. This is an MMORPG shooter built around a giant levitating cube that literally rewrites the laws of reality. The core idea here is actually wild. A massive cube floating in the world, rotating rows, shifting edges, an internal equation that can alter reality itself. And you're not just in it, you're surviving cycles of it. And you survive another turn is doing a lot of the work here. What grabs me isn't just a scale, it's the implication that the environment itself is a system, not a backdrop, not a static dungeon machine. This has living maps instead of content drops. We have to talk about Mundfish. This is a studio that clearly cares about visual identity, the real world building, and committing hard to a theme. Don't make subtle games, make statements. That's both exciting and risky. Here's where it gets tricky. MMO shooters live or die on structure, aggression, petition, retention loops. So the big question is the cube just a cool setting for grind? Or is this a system that meaningfully changes how you play every cycle? For this to work, a few things have to land. Cube needs to evolve, not reset. Player actions need to leave scars on the world. And another turn has to feel dangerous, not routine. Because the moment this becomes predictable, the mystery dies. The risk is obvious. If this turns into a standard MMO shooter, the cool lobby object, the cube becomes aesthetic instead of mechanical, the equation is just lore flavor, and this loses the thing that makes it special. MMO players will see through that fast. But if Mundfish actually commits, the cube dictates enemy behavior, map layout, physics, and progression in real time. Systems collide instead of just stacking. This could be one of the most original MMO concepts we've seen in years. For me, the cube just jumped from interesting curiosity to high risk, high reward watch list. It could either be a genuine new take on an MMO shooter, incredible idea trapped inside familiar systems, and I really want it to be the first one. Alright, from bending reality itself to bending legacy. Some games sell you power, some sell you freedom. Exodus is selling something much stranger. Time, and that alone makes it worth paying attention to. At the heart of Exodus, it's a really bold idea. Time dilation isn't just lore. It's not just dressing. It's a mechanic. You leave, you make choices, you come back, and the world has moved on without you. This is one of those concepts that immediately reframes player agency. Your decisions don't just affect outcomes, they affect when you exist in the story. Most RPGs promise choice. Very few commit to permanence. What excites me here is narrative restraint. This doesn't feel like a game that wants to overwhelm you with branching paths. It feels like a game that wants you to make and live with the choices you've done. There's something very heavy about that. About returning to a place and realizing the version of the world you knew is gone forever. Now, this is also where things can go wrong. Because ideas like this are incredibly hard to execute. If the consequences feel cosmetic, if the time jumps feel scripted instead of systemic, if player choice funnels back into the same outcomes, then the magic collapses. Concept alone doesn't carry a 40-hour RPG. I'm also watching how this plays moment to moment. Great ideas still need strong fundamentals, satisfying combat, meaningful progression, and systems that don't fight the story. Because nothing kills immersion faster than mechanics that contradict the theme. But here's why I'm optimistic. The game isn't chasing trends. It isn't trying to be everything. It feels authored, intentional, like it knows exactly what question it's asking. I'm not expecting Exodus to be perfect. What I am hoping for is commitment. Because if this game fully commits to time as a consequence, it could be one of the most memorable sci-fi RPGs we've seen in years. For me, Exodus is a long-term curiosity with real potential. Not loud anticipation, not blind hype, just a sense that this might be doing something genuinely different. This one comes with baggage. Not bad baggage, heavy baggage. When Ken Levine announces a game, expectations immediately spike. And whether that's fair or not, it's reality. Let's address the obvious. Yes, this looks like a BioShock-adjacent experience. First person, narrative-driven, philosophical overtones. A world that feels a little hostile, symbolic, and a little unhinged. And the question everyone asks is the same. Are we getting another BioShock-level masterpiece, or are we chasing a feeling that belonged to a very specific moment in time? What makes Judas interesting isn't just the aesthetic. It's the idea Levine's been talking about for years. Narrative systems built like Lego blocks. Characters that react dynamically. Story beats that have rearranged themselves. A world that responds to how you play, not just what you choose in dialogue. It's a powerful idea, and also an incredibly dangerous one. Here's why I'm cautious. This game has shown off almost 2 years ago, and since then, it's been quiet. Silence can mean confidence, but it can also mean complexity. Narrative systems like this are notoriously hard to finish, balance, and polish. Ambition doesn't scale cleanly. So the real question with Judas isn't whether it's smart, it's whether it's cohesive. A story feel authored or algorithmic. Because BioShock worked not because of its ideas, but because it controlled how and when those ideas hit you. There's also a timing question here. BioShock landed in an era where games weren't openly interrogating ideology, control, and player agency the way they do now. Today, that space is crowded. So Judas doesn't just need to be thoughtful, it needs to be precise. Despite all that, I'm not dismissive. Ken Levine understands pacing. He understands framing. He understands how to make players feel complicit in a narrative, and those skills don't disappear. They do need the right structure to shine. I'm not walking into Judas expecting it to redefine games. What I am hoping for is focused, confident experience that knows exactly what it wants to say and knows when to stop talking. For me, Judas sits in cautious anticipation. The ingredients are there. The legacy is there. Now we need to see if the execution carry the weight of both. I actually don't know much about this game, so I'm going to react to it in real time and see what it does. Visually pretty impressive already. That's a good start. Okay, not bad. The description reads, is a first-person action game with Souls-like combat, where every death drags you back to the depths, like the dungeon master the combat, and find your way out of the Forsaken Castle. All right, so I definitely don't get Souls-like. One thing that is catching my eye is each run begins in a different cell. Memorize the winding corridors, unlock elevators that stay active, and discover passages that shorten your route. So basically, every time you die, you go back to the beginning, but a different starting point. So that actually makes it kind of unique in that sense. Yeah, last I checked, I'm pretty sure this game had like 20,000 people who wishlisted it. So that's pretty neat. Pretty neat. This is one of those games where the first impression does a lot of the heavy lifting. The visuals are striking, the tone is confident, and right away it feels like it knows the kind of fantasy it wants to be. And that already puts it ahead of a lot of its competition. What stands out immediately is the atmosphere. The world feels harsh, oppressive, deliberately uncomfortable. Not fantasy as escapism, fantasy as survival. There's weight here, in the lighting, in the environments, in the character design. The narrative also looks compelling, at least from what's been shown. This doesn't feel like a chosen one power trip. It feels grounded, personal, consequence driven. The kind of story where decisions aren't about good or evil, but about damage control. One of the most interesting systems here is the day-night cycle. Not just as a visual change, but as a gameplay modifier. That alone opens the door for replayability. Different threats, different opportunities, different outcomes based on when you act, not just how. System-driven replay value is a key feature for games to have sustained player counts. And it matters that this is coming from a team of former CD Projekt Red developers. Not because it guarantees quality, but because it explains the priorities. World building, moral ambiguity, narrative, textures over spectacle. These are people who understand long-form RPG storytelling. But here's the real question. Is this going to be this year's Expeditions 33? Or is it going to fall flat under the weight of its ambition? Because strong ideas don't always survive full-length execution. The risks are familiar, systems that sound deeper than they are, a world that looks incredible but lacks interactivity, narrative that starts strong but can't sustain momentum. Tone matters here. Expectation is a double-edged sword. That said, this doesn't feel like a project chasing trends. It feels authored, intentional, like a team that knows what kind of experience they're building, and that goes a long way. For me, Blood of the Dawnwalker is one of the most intriguing dark fantasy RPGs on this list. Not guaranteed greatness, but real potential. If the systems hold up and the narrative lands, this could absolutely be a breakout hit. Alright, from dark fantasy to something much, much more lawless. I'll be honest about my first reaction to this one. At first glance at the Game Awards, this looked like a DLC for Cyberpunk 2077. And that's not an insult, that's a dangerous comparison. Cyberpunk 2077, all its history, eventually reached some incredibly high points. World density, atmosphere, storytelling. So if your game reminds people of that universe immediately, you're stepping into very tall shadows. To its credit, No Law looked confident in its presentation. Neon-soaked environments, urban decay, a sense of lawlessness that feels systemic, not cosmetic. You can really feel the atmosphere here. There's a mood here that works. A world that feels hostile, not just stylish. Here's the real question this game has to answer. Is this identity or inspiration? Because there's a fine line between homage and imitation. If No Law doesn't establish its own voice quickly, it risks being defined by what resembles instead of what it is. What I'm watching closely is depth. Do the mechanics support the fantasy? Do choices meaningfully affect how you navigate the world? Does lawlessness create tension or just chaos? Style will get people to click on the trailer. Systems are what keep people. Risk here is expectation. The game invites comparisons to something as massive and complex as Cyberpunk. Players bring that baggage with them. If the scope is smaller, if the systems are leaner, if the narrative is more focused, that needs to be communicated clearly, early, or disappointment fills the gaps. Despite all that, I'm not dismissing this. There's confidence in how this world is being shown. And there's room in this genre for more voices, not fewer. For me, No Law is a cautious curiosity. The ceiling is high, the comparison is risky, but if they can carve out its own identity and resist being a Cyberpunk-alike, this could surprise people. Cool. From neon lawlessness to something much more abstract. Alright, I don't have enough context yet for Ontos, so I'm just going to react to what is being shown.
Over here!
Made by Kepler.
Come, talk to me first! I can explain what's going on!
What is existence?
Another space-themed horror game. Survival game, I'm assuming.
Sir. Your father thought he knew. And it inspired him to grant wishes.
Is that a nightmare? Yes!
That's why all of us are here. You want to understand, to know. Then you have to step beyond the walls surround you. Play your father's game. Push the very limits until you're in reality itself. Breaks.
Yeah, definitely not a bad game. Definitely doesn't look bad at all. So, description is a sci-fi mystery set on a repurposed moon hotel. Uncover cryptic experiments, face unsettling encounters, and piece together a mind-bending narrative. The deeper you go, the more truth unravels as you confront the ultimate question. What is reality? Okay. Yeah, we got the story, the experiments, the gameplay, exploration. Interesting. Cool. Carnival Hunt, again, another game I'm not too sure about. I've watched it once and it kind of caught my eye. But it has a creepy setting, strong first impression. I need to see how much of this is atmosphere versus actual mechanics. So we'll watch and react together. I actually really like this concept of being two animatronics trying to survive. But Carnival is genius. Absolutely phenomenal creativity. Yeah, that's something. That is something. So another thing, I do have a demo for this game as well. So I will play that, review it, and then very quickly get that out for you because I think that actually did look really cool. Yeah, an asymmetric horror strategy multiplayer game. One player takes the role of the carnival monster. The other players take... Oh, so it's like multiplayer. Oh, wow. Yeah, replay Eddie. No two playthroughs are ever the same. To survive, you'll need a trustworthy team and a perfect execution. Yeah, that's wild. That is wild. I'm actually a lot more excited for this than I thought I would have been. Yeah, leave a like or comment if you want me to review the demo. Maybe stream it. Maybe. I don't have any of that equipment set up, but we'll figure it out. That's all I can do. This game feels like a challenge. Not to other RPGs, but to the direction of the genre itself. Wayward Realms, holy cow, that's a mouthful, isn't trying to be modern in a traditional sense. It's just trying to be fundamental. At its core, this is a game about scale and system. Not cinematic spectacle, not curated story beats, but a world that exists whether you engage with it or not. This is old school RPG philosophy, taken to its logical extreme. There's something genuinely exciting about a game that isn't afraid of complexity, a world that doesn't constantly guide you, systems that interact whether you understand them or not, a sense that you're inhabiting a place, not consuming content. It matters who's making this. This isn't a team guessing what RPGs used to be. These are developers who helped define that era. That lends credibility, but it also raises expectations. The real question is execution. Can a game this ambitious actually function smoothly in a modern context? Because massive scale introduces massive challenges. Performance, UI clarity, player onboarding, narrative cohesion. Ambition alone doesn't solve these problems. One of the hardest balances here will be accessibility. The systems are too opaque, players bounce. They're simplified too much, the identity collapses. This game needs to respect player intelligence without punishing curiosity. The Wayward Realms lands to remind the industry that RPGs don't all need to chase cinematic storytelling or action-first design. There is still room for simulation-heavy worlds, emergent storytelling, and player-driven identity. If this overpromises and underdelivers, if the scale overwhelms cohesion, if the systems don't meaningfully connect, then this becomes another cautionary tale. And the genre has had enough of those. For me, the Wayward Realms is cautious admiration. I respect the ambition, I respect the philosophy, now I want to see the execution can carry the weight of the idea.
You would rather just spend your time fishing?
This one feels oppressive in the best way. Out loud, not flashy, just heavy. Luna Abyss looks like a game that wants you uncomfortable from the moment you step inside. What stands out immediately is atmosphere. Tight corridors, cold architecture, a sense that this place was never meant to support human life. This isn't sci-fi as wonder, it's sci-fi as abandonment. Horror works best when the environment feels hostile before anything actually happens. And Luna Abyss seems to understand that. Fear isn't just what's chasing you, it's where you are, how little control you actually have. What I'm watching closely is how tension is maintained. Is combat desperate, costly, or empowering? Because sci-fi horror collapses the moment the player feels dominant. If you're too strong, the fear disappears. The big question here is pacing. Can Luna Abyss sustain this level of tension over several hours? Or does it peak early and coast on atmosphere? Sound design here is going to do a lot of work. Distant noise, mechanical echoes, silence where it should be sound. This is a good place to really slow down and engage with players. Let them understand what's at stake. Let that tension breathe, right? Those are the moments where horror lives. Risk is repetition. The environments blur together, enemy encounters become routine, tension becomes predictable, and the fear turns into fatigue. What's encouraging is restraint. This doesn't feel like a game trying to shock you every 5 minutes. It feels like a game confident enough to let discomfort simmer. For me, Luna Abyss is high-interest horror title. Seems to be the trend for 2026. Not because it's trying to reinvent the genre, because it seems to understand what actually makes it work. If you've played the first Outward, which I have not, you already know exactly what kind of game to expect. Never played it. I did see it. I've seen other people play it. Never played it myself, but it does seem, I am more curious about how much they evolved it. But we're going to react together because I haven't even seen a trailer for this one yet either.
To create Outward, we asked ourselves, What would it be like to live the life of a common adventurer? How does it play out when ordinary people must achieve extraordinary things?
Don't know if that's me or the actual gameplay here.
To us, immersion is much more compelling than empowerment. We let intensity be defined by the calm that came before. A time to ponder.
Okay, yeah, animations look alright. Definitely for a sequel, you would think that would get polished up a little bit more, but you know, still plenty of time before this game comes out. Okay, so Outward 2 is a challenging action RPG with survival elements focusing around a grounded experience. There's no hand-holding, no scaled encounters, no divine blessings to make you tower over your enemies. Eat your meal, check your map, grab your backpack, and unforgiving reward adventure awaits. Okay. Yeah, so a survival RPG. No direct play style. Prepare for every fight. Refine. See, the combat system, they say it's refined. It didn't seem so refined. I'm sure it is compared to the first game. But, like I said, there's still plenty of time for polishing. And just a lot of the animation seemed kind of just a little laggy, I guess would be the best way to describe it. I don't want to say janky. It's not janky. It seems fluid, especially in this little snippet here. Yeah, in this little snippet here, it does seem very fluid, but in the gameplay trailer, it definitely looked a little yeah, stuttery. All right, Half Sword. This looks insanely real. I just want to see how much of that realism actually translates into fun gameplay. Physics-based medieval combat simulator. So I want to see if there's actually a game here, or if this is just more like Universal Sandbox. But we'll find out together, yeah. Let's see. These guys are also masters at making large-scale combat sims. And so good news is that you can do this one-on-one apparently, which is nice. Yeah, see the lagginess is something that you're definitely not buying this with the expectation of supreme graphics, but the physics does seem pretty cool. It's like any of these games that have you know, like crash dummies or anything where they kind of just flop around. Their joints are very rigid, so they don't move fluidly. They're kind of just like very bouncy, right? Yeah, looks good for what it is. If you just go in knowing, again, tech demo, so I'll probably give it a shot too. If you guys would like to see it, leave a comment. You guys know what to do. But yeah, don't go in expecting a game. I think if you go in thinking it's a game, you're going to be slightly more disappointed. Where I think if you go in thinking, oh, it's a simulator, you know, I think you'll have a lot more fun with it. All right, on record, looks insanely real. I kind of just want to see how much of that realism turns into gameplay. Single-player FPS that tells the story of a tactical police officer from the perspective of his body cam, which is awesome. I love body cam. The online multiplayer game, I think it's phenomenal. Is this made by the same publisher? No, different publisher. Okay. Yeah, there's something about the visuals you can get with this. This is wild. already unbelievably realistic off the jump. Look at these graphics, man. Oh my god, hyperrealism at its finest. Whoa.
Shots fired! Shots fired!
Oh my god, man, this game looks great. This game looked great. Alright, I don't even need to see any more. Like, this looks phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay, so arguably, this is probably one of the games that I've been looking forward to for about 2 years now. But there are just some ideas that don't need justification. They just absolutely need commitment, right? And Kingmakers is one of those ideas. Medieval knights, modern weapons, rocket launchers, rifles, and vehicles drop straight into the past. If that doesn't tickle that specific part of your brain, I don't know. Obviously, this game isn't for you, but I wouldn't know what game is. This game takes absurdity and doesn't blink. It doesn't ask if this makes sense, it asks how far you can push it. And honestly, that confidence is refreshing. So many games flirt with weird ideas and then walk them back. Kingmakers run straight at the wall. And what makes this more than just a meme is the system layer underneath. This isn't just you mowing down knights for laughs. There's strategy here. Large-scale battles, cause and effect on a battlefield. You're not breaking history, you're rewriting it. There's something deeply satisfying about seeing eras collide like this. Modern tactics versus medieval formations. Technology versus tradition. It's ridiculous, but also strangely elegant. I love the sandbox chaos, the emergent moments, and games that can create stories accidentally. The big question with Kingmakers is longevity. Is this a clever novelty that's fun for a few hours, or do systems actually support sustained play? Because absurdity hooks tension. Depth is what keeps it. The risk is balance. If modern weapons trivialize everything, the tension disappears. If the game overcorrects and nerfs the fantasy, the fun goes with it. This game lives on a knife edge, between chaos and boredom. But what gives me hope is how unapologetic it feels. This isn't a game hedging its bets. It knows exactly what fantasy it's delivering, and that matters more than polish sometimes. For me, Kingmakers is one of the most fun ideas on this entire list. Not because it's trying to be profound, but because it understands joy, spectacle, and controlled chaos. And after that level of insanity, we end on something much quieter. Alright, so Kinstrife is next. It's a medieval strategy RPG with physics-based combat. But this actually tends to have a story attached to it. So let's watch and give it a look. So off the jump from that other medieval physics-based combat simulator, this has way better graphics. The movement is a lot more fluid. You actually have RPG mechanics here. You actually have characters you can interact with. A character builder. Wow. Yeah, full layered combat here. You're progressing from a squire to a knight, basically. Look at this. This is like 40 on 40 people. That's actually pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Yeah, no, I like it a lot. I like it a lot. Yeah, non-linear open world. Yeah, create and train your own knight with skills, unique traits tailored to your playstyle. Prepare for battle with the finest arms, armors, and garments of the time. Writing history, gain influence through battles, chivalry, and strategic finesse, while building and leading a loyal red train of supporters. No, it's great. It looks great. It looks like it does just about everything you would want it to. This is arguably the game you would want if that other game, Outward... Was it Outward 2? I can't remember if it was that word too. But it's arguably that type of simulator, but this simulator is a game. So, thumbs up for me. I'm actually really excited for this one. And yep, we'll move on. Turn-based games are in a weird place right now, because whether studios like it or not, the bar has been permanently raised by Baldur's Gate 3 and Larian Studios. That game didn't just prove turn-based combat is still relevant, it proved it can be reactive, cinematic, and emotionally engaging at the highest level. So the question for Disciples' domination is unavoidable. Does this feel hollow by comparison, or can it carve out its own path? What helps here is that Disciples isn't trying to be BG3. This is tactical, slower, more deliberate, less about improvisational chaos, more about positioning, planning, and long-term consequences. The danger is familiarity. The systems don't feel meaningfully distinct. If combat becomes routine instead of strategic, players will feel the absence of that BG3 level reactivity. The opportunity is focus. Disciples' domination leans fully into tight tactical encounters, meaningful difficulty, and strong sense of grim fantasy identity. It doesn't need to compete with spectacle. For me, this is a wait-and-see strategy RPG. Not chasing the crown, but seeing if it can stand confidently beside the giants without pretending to be one. This is one of those games where pitch lives or dies on execution, because co-op stealth is hard, really hard, and Thick as Thieves is bold enough to build its entire identity around it. At its core, this is a co-op stealth game that's less about individual skill and more about synchronization, timing, positioning, trust. This isn't a game where one player carries the team. It's a game where mistakes ripple. Most co-op games reward chaos. Stealth games punish it. So combining the two creates tension that's very different from traditional multiplayer. It's weird having shared responsibility and non-verbal coordination, especially with random players. Failure being collective, not personal. When it works, it feels incredible. When it doesn't, it's painful. So the real question with Thick as Thieves is this: does the game teach players how to cooperate, or does it assume they already know how? Because perfect coordination isn't realistic for most groups. This to succeed, systems have to be forgiving without being trivial, clear feedback, readable enemy behavior, those that encourage teamwork instead of punishing experimentation. If the difficulty curve is too sharp, like Escape from Tarkov, players bounce, or they commit. I don't know. Tarkov is like its own little thing. If it's too loose, stealth loses its meaning. What I like so far is the confidence in tone. Stylized presentation, clear silhouettes, a world that prioritizes readability over realism. It's important in co-op stealth. Players need information more than spectacle. Risk is obvious. This only works with a perfectly coordinated group. It becomes niche very fast. And niche co-op games live or die on community. For me, Thick as Thieves is a system watch game. If the mechanics genuinely support cooperation, this could be a standout co-op experience. If not, it'll be remembered as a great idea that was harder to play than it needed to be.
It's every fate themselves.
I've been recording for 3 hours. A little coffee break there. I want to end on something a little quieter. And honestly, a little hopeful. One of the real feel-good surprises recently was Dispatch. It didn't need spectacle, it didn't need massive systems, it just told a story, and it told it well. What made Dispatch work was confidence. It knew its scope, it respected the player's time, and it focused on characters and tone instead of chasing whatever nonsense people are chasing these days. So, in 2026, I really do hope we get Season 2. Not because everything needs to be a franchise, but because this feels like a world and a voice that still has more to say. If Season 1 was about establishing the rhythm, Season 2 could deepen the relationships, raise the stakes just enough, and let the writing breathe. And honestly, as a gamer, that's all we can do. Games like Dispatch are proof that not everyone has to be loud. Sometimes the best games just land. 2026 is stacked, chaotic, risky, and exciting. Even half of these games stick to landing, we're in for something special. And if not, at least we'll have a lot to talk about. Alright, that's the landscape. And now this is where you come in. If you like this breakdown, hit like. And I mean really hit that like button, like punch your phone. Why not? It generally helps a lot more than people think. And if you disagree with me, thought I was too harsh, too optimistic, or completely off base, please leave a comment. That's the whole point of GameScope. And right now, I have demos I can actually play, not just spectate on. In no particular order, I have Banquet for Fools, Broken Lore Unfollow, one of the games we discussed, Carnival Hunt, another game we discussed, Half Sword, another game we discussed, I Hate This Place, Luna Abyss, The Occultist, 2 games that were mentioned here, Pragmata, which I played and will be releasing shortly after this does. Reanimal, Tides of Tomorrow, and a game I know we did not mention, but deserves to be talked about, Unemployment Simulator 2018. So, tell me what you want. What should I actually play? What deserves a full review? And which one do you think is being slept on? GameScope isn't about hype. It's about finding out what's actually worth your time. And with that said, my name is Melvin Vargas. Thank you for watching. Thanks to Rogue Vision, Rogue Gaming Media, Pixel Pulse, and of course, GameScope. Cheers.